Bien, vamos a dar inicio al plenario de cierre, donde se hablará del futuro del OGP. El segundo encuentro mundial se realizará en Londres el próximo mes de abril. Participarán en este panel Neil Hurd, ministro para la Sociedad Civil del Reino Unido, Huguette Labelle, presidenta de Transparencia Internacional, y el señor Claudio Alvarado, subsecretario general de la Presidencia del Ministerio de la Secretaría General de la Presidencia de Chile. Nick, please. You, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, I must apologize, but I will speak in English. And let me start with the observations of someone who lived in Brazil for 5 years, but who is not of this region. Let me start with the observations of a minister who has only recently assumed responsibility for this area in my country. I think it is extraordinary what has been achieved in just 2 years. I think it is extraordinary, this alliance that has been created. Just to stop and reflect on what has happened. 58 countries, representing 2 billion people around the world, have come together. The leadership of those governments has come together and said, we have to change dramatically the way that government works, the way that government engages with the people that we represent. We've created an alliance of mutual support that starts by recognizing that each country starts from a different place culturally in the face of this issue of openness and transparency, and which critically has placed the need for government and civil society to engage together, to cooperate at the heart of this mission. It is, I think, an extraordinary achievement so far. And so I should start by genuinely congratulating our friends from Brazil and from the United States for their absolutely outstanding leadership so far in helping us take OGP to where we are today. And in particular, I would like to pay my respects to Undersecretary Maria Otero for her leadership in this area. But I'd also like to congratulate everyone in this room, because I sense in this room, and over the last few days, I've been in the presence of many people who have been fighting very hard for a very long time for this breakthrough, for this progress. And I congratulate you all. And I will go back to London reporting that I have detected a very, very serious commitment to this agenda that is not naive, that understands that there are tremendous challenges and complexities, but that there is a real determination here. And having lived in Brazil for 5 years, I also have a sense of how enormous the implications are for this continent, for this region, going forward. And so I genuinely congratulate you on the leadership shown in this room. I genuinely congratulate Chile for the initiative in convening this very important meeting, as well as for their individual leadership on this issue. I was embarrassed, well, not so much, but I was a little embarrassed today. I had a meeting with Minister Laurelet, and I was boasting a little of a new web platform that we're very proud of in our country, which is a new website that aggregates all the government tender contracts for public procurement over a value of £10,000. And we're very proud of it. And I was boasting about it. And he very calmly and very courteously said, yes, we've had that in Chile for 10 years. Which is, I think, also an important message about the value of this alliance, which is we have so much to learn from each other. So let me share with you our vision of how we want to confront our challenge now, of how we follow Brazil and United States in working with our friends in Indonesia in co-chairing OGP over this next year, which I think is very critical in terms of maintaining momentum, in terms of maintaining the special culture of this alliance, of this movement, but also critically in terms of reinforcing its credibility. And I'd like to say a little about that. If you're worried that we are not sufficiently ambitious, please let me reassure you that the United Kingdom is extremely ambitious in this area. My Prime Minister, my boss, David Cameron, has made a public statement that we, on our own account, want to be the most open and transparent government in the world. We are also co-chair this year of the G8. No, not co-chair. We are chair of the G8 this year. And my Prime Minister has said that we want to put openness and transparency on the agenda of the G8. So we have a perhaps unique opportunity to bring together the work of OGP and G8 to really try and take this forward this year. But our vision for this year is that we should focus less on expanding the network that has grown very fast and more on delivering results and tangible benefits for those of you who have committed to this alliance and to this journey. And we want to, with Indonesia, focus on 4 things. We think that we can do more to communicate the benefits of open government and draw out from this amazing network, from this amazing alliance, some of the extraordinary stories that are being written about what actually open government and open data can do in terms of delivering practical benefits to citizens, whether it be giving them much better information about how their local travel system works, whether it be practical benefits to businesses that are taking advantage of new open data, whether it's practical benefits in terms of corrupt politicians being held to account, whether it's practical benefits in terms of budget decisions being taken more efficiently, practical benefits in terms of government being able to coordinate its work together more effectively. We need to tell a story of the practical benefits of this agenda for other governments and for the people that we represent as well. So you can expect more of that. We think also that we can do more to connect people in the network who need advice and support with those people who can provide it. The network has grown very fast, and we feel perhaps that the support mechanisms underpinning it have been put under tremendous pressure, and we think that we can do more over the next few months to make the networking mechanism that we've set up work that much more effectively for all of us. So you can expect more of that. And thirdly, we come to the independent reporting mechanism, which I know you've heard about earlier today, and which we think is absolutely central to reinforcing the credibility of this process. One of the features of this alliance is it doesn't exist to impose standards or set standards. I think that's one of its strengths. But we all must not want this to be a process that slides down the bottom. We want this to be a process of rising to the top in terms of standards. And we want this to be a process that also supports champions of reform in countries around the world, both inside or outside government. So this independent reporting mechanism, we think, is incredibly important. And as you know, the process is underway. And we've made 8 senior appointments to the international expert panel. We're actively looking for someone who can properly represent the interests of Latin America. And I really hope that this network will participate in that process to help us find the right person. The first independent reports will come out later this year, including, I expect, on my own country. And the point I want to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that we know that there are sensitivities around this process. It's the reason why some countries have decided not to join this alliance. But we think it is important, but we also know that this process needs to be monitored very closely. We need to make sure that it is impartial, we need to make sure that it is accurate, and we need this process to evolve through feedback, through careful monitoring, through refinement, but we must get it right because it is absolutely fundamental, we believe, to the credibility of this alliance. It has to work for the members, but it also has to work for those outside who are looking at the seriousness of this process. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, we want to build on the unique working relationship between government and civil society in this process. I know that it's working in different ways in different places. Of course it is. Not least because civil society is in different stages of development in different parts of the world. But we said right from the start that we wanted, at the core of this process, to build in this unique cooperation between civil society and government. It is part, I think, of the essential culture and success of this alliance. And we look to build on that this year. And all I can say already from attending steering group meetings in London is we have outstanding civil society contribution into those meetings, and civil society is leading key OGP policy, including outreach work. And for our part, we're trying to do something different in terms of our own country action plan by trying, as I said yesterday, to do it as a genuine co-production, a genuine co-creation with civil society. And that's not an easy process. But we're determined to take this one stage further to really try and reinforce this point of partnership working. So in short, ladies and gentlemen, this coming year we feel is a critical time for the OGP. We need to consolidate and we need to build on our success and quite simply show we are here to stay. It won't be easy because, as we all know, transparency never is. But we also know that we've started on this journey and it is an irreversible journey. There's only one direction of travel from here on, and we must get this right. But I genuinely believe that together these ambitions can be achieved, and the OGP can play a crucial role in giving citizens across the world the transparent, effective, and accountable governments they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hart. Ahora dejamos con ustedes a Huguet Labelle, presidente de Transparencia Internacional.
Estimadas autoridades, señoras, señores, es un placer para mí participar en ese encuentro regional abierto, gobierno abierto. And I must say that I'm very impressed to see that many of you are still here at this time on a Friday night, being in Santiago, when there are so many more exciting things to do than listen to us. But I think it means that you do care about the subject that we're talking about. And I'd like to join Nick in congratulating the organizers of this meeting, because I think that this meeting truly represents the spirit of OGP, in having civil society and having governments sitting at the same table, around tables very often, trying to define, to refine the problems, to design new ways of doing things, to learn from each other, identify solutions, see how we can best go forward, look at obstacles that are in our way. And I think that this is just tremendous, and I said within the spirit of the Open Government Initiative. My only wish is that I would have been at every session, which I felt deprived by not being able to sit in. And those that I did sit in, I think, were tremendously helpful and was a real learning experience for me. Whenever I have visited this region in recent years, I've always been inspired by the work being done here to bring government closer to the people. And as a region with some of the strongest transparency laws and practices around the world, and with inspiring experiments in participatory democracy, social auditing, budgeting, I think it's appropriate that the OGP was born on this continent. And I think one of the main strengths of the Open Government Initiative is that it allows citizens and invites citizens to live their democracy in their daily lives by facilitating their participation in public affairs and giving them responsibility over their elected officials. But it also puts a lot of responsibility on the authorities, and some of you are those authorities in this room, who are much more under scrutiny, and to also need to understand the meaning of public office well beyond elections, well beyond appointments, and that basically transparency and accountability are essential elements of a democratic system. So OGP is very much a fundamental support to well-functioning democracies, young and old, in Latin America and elsewhere. And although open government has been accepted as a principle, I think in many countries around the world, the proactive disclosure of information exists in some countries, but there is still a long way to go in that regard. And also it exists in some sectors more than in others, and we've got to make sure that it permeates through all the sectors. And, you know, we have hundreds of thousands of bodies, public bodies around the world that are now subject to access to information laws. I think India is an interesting example with, you know, quite a lot of citizens in that country, where they've received more than 1.5 million freedom of information requests since 2007 alone. And of course, in many countries, we now have public budgets that are available at the click of a button, as well as disbursements of these budgets. And of course, all that is very important. And I think there's a true feeling in the discussion that we had at this meeting that open government is really fundamental in building and holding the trust of citizens into their government, but also in preventing corruption and loss of resources. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of seeing this as a very important aspect, and that the value proposition, of course, in OGP is that, as I mentioned a few days ago in another setting, that the information that governments have, and I was in government for a long time in my life, that the information that governments have are the people's information. So we're only the custodians. We're not the owners. The people are the owners of that information. But of course, there are pushbacks. And those of you who are in the process of implementing these measures know that it's not always easy to make open government a reality on the ground where it works. In some countries, some laws have been stuck for decades in parliaments. Other times, the laws are passed, but it takes a long time for their implementation, or citizens face very lengthy periods before they can have the information or have to go to the courts. So we know we have work to do together. So we can't forget that. Now, I would like to suggest, because we're talking about the future at this session, like to suggest some ideas, and I hope they're being provided very humbly from just one out of many of you who have a lot of expertise in this field. First, I would like to join Nick in his comment about the fact that there is already a critical mass of countries involved. We're talking about 58 countries, I understand. And of course, nobody should close the door to countries who qualify well and who are knocking on the door. But it may not be the right time to push for a great expansion, but more for consolidation and to achieve quality, make sure that the peer reviews work, that the highest standard is achieved, and that it becomes a solid mechanism, because the peer review is a tremendous means not only of getting governments not to sit on their laurels once they've made a commitment, but also to learn from each other in terms of what has worked, what are the problems, what has been done to overcome these problems. So my second idea here is to find additional ways together to actively make available the experiences of the OGP countries. This is an excellent way of doing it. The peer review results are another way. And there could be additional mechanisms, for example, of linking the wealth of information coming out from OGP into other websites, like the World Bank Institute website, our Transparency International Help Desk, the AU website, so that people, because I understand the information that we have is still underused on the website. So, looking for new ways of making that available. My third point is about incentives. And I heard a number of incentives at this meeting being identified. And this is so powerful to get countries, to get departments, to get specific groups of employees to want to go forward and implement what we're talking about here. And so my suggestion would be that hopefully somebody can gather all the ideas that have been put forward at this meeting as incentives and make them available to the countries of the OGP countries next week. Not too early. My other point is in relation to the people. I think that we are gathered here as governments, civil society, which is so tremendous. And one of the things that I know we are trying to do increasingly better in Transparency International is to reach out to the people and help people better know how to be part of what we're talking about here. I'm talking of the citizens of our countries, and there's a lot of those. So how does one train citizens to know how to access information, how to identify the kind of information that is important for them to have in order to better live their lives, to better work with their governments so that they're informed people. And so I think that together we may need to spend a bit more time on that particular one. Now, I would like to identify sort of a few areas where, which are high potential areas that we may want to put some special focus on, although we already have a framework in the OGP. But looking at some of those where the potential is greatest. And we had a session on natural resources at this meeting, where many countries, 50% or more of their revenues come or should come from natural resources, exploration and exploitation. So, the disclosure here of that information, how to make it easily available by the business sector, by the governments, and not just disclosing what is being paid, but other financial information, subsidiaries, etc., I think is vital. And of course, we have Dodd-Frank in the US, we have the UK legislation, which is a very important one, the EU legislation. So, around the world now, there's a greater set of these requirements from a legislative point of view to demand this by law. However, I hope that one doesn't have to wait for legislation to do something which is so important for the people. I think the second area is the financial sector. And here my only point will be, I think there's a great opportunity to link up the Open Government Initiative to the work of the G20 and the anti-corruption working group of the G20, the B20, the Business 20, because the Financial Stability Board, because we're talking there of a lot of transparency, of increased transparency in the financial sector. And so we might be able to learn a lot from that, and they from the open government going forward. Of course, again, at this meeting, we heard a lot about contracting and building of infrastructure, which is estimated at about 50 trillion needed over in terms of infrastructure from now until 2030. And it's probably a low estimate. A lot of loose cash here. And if you lose 15%, which is usually higher for corruption, on 50 trillion, there's an awful lot of infrastructure that won't be built, and it will cost more to the people. So the transparency in this sector is so vital, and I would hope that the spotlight can remain very high on that one. In terms of service to citizens, of course, we have spent a lot of our energy together at the national level, but increasingly, local government, municipalities have been identified as a major area of improvement, because that's where the people live. That's from whom they get the services. And it's with those levels of government that they need to become active participants with full information. And there's a lot of work, and I know this is an issue that many governments, including the Chilean government, and I know a number of governments that I've met in the region, be it Colombia, be it Brazil, and some of the other governments, Mexico as another example, all feel that this is a major area. So I think it might be a good time to spend much more of our energy on trying to see how to best help those local government to become transparent entities, to become governments that work with the people. And perhaps two more points in terms of areas. And over the next years, as we have had in the past, but potentially more in the next year, we have major international funds being put together. We have some on climate change that have been promised. I presume they will come, at least in part. And we always have a lot of humanitarian assistance and reconstruction after natural disasters. So here, reducing the loss of massive resources at times, contributing to planetary security, because if you invest well, hopefully we're going to do better on climate change, but also to create safer communities, so that if you do have an earthquake, that you don't have the same amount of loss of lives, and hopefully none going downstream. So these are areas that I think, again, have high resource, high potential for loss, and tremendous importance for our countries, and where openness remains so important. And perhaps my other point is on security. And here I'm talking more about illicit trade, but also security of our communities, and how to ensure that the police works in a transparent way, that there are ombudsmen for the police, so that if people have problems. Jamaica is an interesting country which has established one of those for their police, and there might be others in other countries in this region. But, we have the whole security of people. We have the whole issue of illicit trade, which is very often fed, illicit trade in people, in arms and drugs, that affect all of our communities in different levels. And again, the tenet of this initiative is so important in that regard. And before concluding, I would like to just say a word or two about oversight institutions. Access to information institutions, controllers general, auditors general, and the importance of these institutions in giving life to the OGP and helping to prepare citizens, helping to prepare governments and train them, but at the same time setting the right standards and making this happen. And of course here we have heard about Consejo de Transparencia, which has been a very independent council, which is what you want in these institutions, and the kind of work that you have all been doing. So in conclusion, I think that the problem that we face today requires stewardship at home, but also a new cooperation between countries. And the idea of this group coming together already sets the foundation for cooperation because we get to know each other and it's easier. So governments, business, civil society obviously need to work together, not just at the national level, but at the regional level, at the global level, at the local level at the other end, and in a concert, a good philharmonic orchestra to be able to bring all of our experiences to bear on these most important problems, but tremendous opportunities. So this is what we're talking about, opportunity, when we talk about OGP. And Nick, April is coming very soon. Thank you.
Agradecemos a la presidenta de Transparencia Internacional y dejamos con ustedes ahora a Claudio Alvarado, subsecretario general de la Presidencia del Ministerio de Secretaría General de la Presidencia de Chile.
Buenas tardes, autoridades que nos acompañan, distinguidos expositores, invitados internacionales, amigas y amigos de los países miembros de la Alianza de Gobierno Abierto. Estamos culminando este encuentro regional de Gobierno Abierto con la satisfacción, sin duda, de un trabajo intenso, cuyos resultados se traducen en continuar promoviendo medidas de mayor transparencia en nuestros gobiernos. De esta forma, estamos abriendo espacios permanentes de participación y colaboración ciudadana, cuyo objetivo final no es otro que contribuir a una mejor democracia y a un mayor bienestar de nuestros ciudadanos. La apertura de información y el acceso de los ciudadanos a la misma permite formarse una opinión objetiva sobre el estado de la sociedad, sus instituciones públicas y la gestión de éstas, dando paso a un aumento en la participación, de la participación en las decisiones de gobierno, mejorando con ello la calidad de los procesos de discusión y decisión política. El gobierno del presidente Piñera ha dado un énfasis prioritario a las tareas de modernización del Estado y para tal efecto está implementando iniciativas tendientes a profundizar un Estado al servicio de las personas. Para este fin, se ha definido una agenda especial que se articula en 3 ejes de acción: un gobierno cercano, gobierno eficiente y un gobierno abierto. Por esta razón, nuestro gobierno, en su oportunidad, acogió con gran satisfacción la invitación a adherir a esta iniciativa multilateral, Alianza para el Gobierno Abierto, y asumimos, por supuesto, en plenitud los desafíos que ello significa. En esta tarde, cuando estamos clausurando este encuentro, solo quiero emplear unos pocos minutos para decir unas últimas 4 cosas muy breves, ya que sé muy bien que han tenido 2 días de muy intenso y fructífero trabajo. La primera de ellas es que para el Gobierno de Chile es motivo de gran satisfacción haber podido contar estos días con la presencia de todos y cada uno de ustedes, autoridades y representantes de la sociedad civil y del sector privado de toda América y el Reino Unido, para discutir algo tan importante como es la manera de lograr que nuestros estados sean más transparentes y participativos y consigan así relacionarse mejor con los ciudadanos y satisfacer mejor sus necesidades. En consecuencia, encuentros como este nos ayudan para fortalecer la confianza de las personas en los procesos de gobierno, aumentar la eficacia en la administración pública, legitimando la acción de quienes gobernamos. Lo que aquí se ha debatido es fundamental para perfeccionar nuestras democracias, para fortalecer nuestras instituciones y para obtener de estas un mayor aporte al desarrollo de nuestras naciones. En segundo término, puedo señalar que hemos tomado debida nota de importantes desafíos futuros, como por ejemplo la necesidad de incorporar a los parlamentos a las prácticas de gobierno abierto y perfeccionar los mecanismos de participación en la construcción y seguimiento de las agendas de gobierno. La Alianza para el Gobierno Abierto es una iniciativa que ya está mejorando nuestros estados. Y actividades como esta nos muestran el camino para seguir avanzando y sacar un provecho todavía mayor a ella. El tercer ámbito que deseo destacar es que nuestro gobierno está totalmente convencido de la necesidad de continuar participando y colaborando, ya sea en este tipo de reuniones o en actividades bilaterales, y poder así generar instancias de diálogo, compartir experiencias y ayudarnos recíprocamente a progresar en las iniciativas de gobierno abierto. Sepan entonces, todos y cada uno de ustedes, que nuestro país está total y absolutamente disponible para ello. Al finalizar, simplemente les doy las gracias en nombre del Gobierno de Chile por su presencia y sus valiosos aportes, y quiero decirles que en nuestro país serán ustedes siempre muy bienvenidos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, subsecretario. Estamos llegando al final ya de este encuentro, de estas jornadas muy provechosas por lo demás, pero antes de terminar queremos agradecer a la Embajada de los Estados Unidos en Chile, a la Embajada de Gran Bretaña, al Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, al Instituto del Banco Mundial, al Senado de la República, a la Cámara de Diputados, al Consejo para la Transparencia, a la Universidad Andrés Bello, a la Embajada de Canadá, a la Red de Transparencia y Acceso a Información y a Chile Transparente. Y por supuesto a todas las personas que han colaborado para que este evento haya cumplido con las expectativas cifradas. Muchas gracias y será hasta una próxima oportunidad.